This video is presented for educational and analytical purposes only. This represents alleged federal courtroom proceedings from the Sean Combs case, as documented by Inner City Press. What began as routine correspondence became the catalyst for unprecedented revelations. An overlooked email, tucked deep within a thread no one was supposed to read, set off a chain reaction no one could have imagined. It wasn't uncovered through subpoenas or whistleblowers, but through a simple mistake. A forwarded message, a wrong recipient, human error. That one message cracked open a vault of secrets. And by the time it made its way to a courtroom, its implications had already spilled into public consciousness. A wildfire no statement or spin could contain. At the center of it all, Taylor Swift. Not just the megastar, not just the sold-out shows, but an empire now shadowed by suspicion. Her global concert series, once hailed as the defining spectacle of modern entertainment, was suddenly the subject of criminal investigation. And the questions being asked had nothing to do with music. The evidence spoke in chilling tones. Meticulous lists of attendees, surveillance-level documentation, access logs that made no sense, and reports of missing fans whose cases had quietly gone cold. There were whispers of secret backstage clearances, of people entering who were never seen exiting. Prosecutors painted a disturbing picture, that somewhere behind the smoke, the lights, the perfectly choreographed magic, lurked a hidden operation. A system that didn't just move merchandise and melodies, but something far darker. Something that used the tour's infrastructure not to elevate art, but to enable exploitation. No one saw it coming. And now, no one can look away. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted subtly at first, then decisively. On the display screens, what appeared to be just another operational document came into focus. No audio recordings. No witness testimony. Just an internal memo, mundane, procedural, routine. Or so it seemed. It was titled VIP Review Nashville plus Tampa. The kind of logistical paperwork that would normally pass unnoticed. Venue confirmations, access protocols, digital credentials. Tour staff emailing in circles, checking boxes. A layer of bureaucracy behind the spectacle of music. But then, response 12. One highlighted directive. 7 words that froze the room. Send the scout names directly to LA Mark. Home MS. Silence fell like a curtain. A beat of confusion, then dawning comprehension. The presiding judge leaned forward. The stenographer paused. Counsel for the defense rose quickly, objecting. But it was too late. The document had already entered the record as Exhibit 42A. The weight of those 7 words wasn't just in what they said, but in who they pointed to. LA Mark. Home MS. The terms didn't belong to the tour. They belonged to Sean Combs' organization. What was a name? Linked to another empire entirely, doing in a backstage logistics thread. From the world's biggest pop stars tour? The courtroom now understood. This wasn't about music anymore. This was about a connection. One hidden in plain sight, in emails no one thought to question. The most profitable tour in history had a paper trail that crossed into unexpected territory. And this memo? It wasn't just a document. It was a doorway. They called them the Crimson 10. That's what federal investigators labeled the group. Not fans, not staff, but targets. Pulled from archived digital files linked to the touring operation. They weren't selected at random. According to prosecution allegations, these 10 individuals were identified, flagged, and tracked. Photos surfaced. Different cities, different nights. But always the same pattern. Young women in the crowd, each wearing a red wristband. Identical. Unbranded. Not sold in merchandise booths. Not included in VIP packages. Not mentioned in any official documentation from Swift's team. At first glance, they looked harmless, fashionable, maybe even exclusive. But technical analysis told a different story. These weren't accessories. They were devices. FBI forensic specialists revealed that the red bands contained passive RFID chips. the kind used in high-security environments, capable of location tracking within specific zones, discreet, untraceable by the wearer. In a stadium packed with tens of thousands, they made 10 people visible. This wasn't fan engagement, one agent testified. This was surveillance. The implications hit hard. Who issued the bans? Why were these 10 individuals singled out? And what, exactly, were they being watched for? The courtroom, already rattled from earlier revelations, now faced a chilling question. In the glitz and glamour of the world's biggest tour, was something far more calculated hiding in plain sight? And if so, who was watching? Testimony that day was unlike any other. Parents, mothers and fathers took the stand one by one, their voices shaking as they recounted the last messages from their daughters. Young women, excited, hopeful, convinced they were about to live a dream. An exclusive fan experience with their idol, Taylor Swift. Invited through sleek, professional-looking social media messages. Indistinguishable from official tour promotions. Each of them received the same package. No logos, no sender address. Just a plain box containing a red wristband. And detailed instructions for arrival at a specific venue gate. Not the main entrance. Not the VIP line. But service gates reserved for loading crews and technical staff. Security footage confirmed it. Several young women entered through those back routes. Each one logged as a temporary crew member in digital security systems. But here's the part that made the courtroom fall silent. They never appeared inside the arena. Not on fan cams. Not in crowd footage. Not in seating charts. They never made it to the concerts they were promised. And after they were marked as having arrived, all communication stopped. No texts. No calls. No updates. Just silence. The prosecution painted a harrowing picture. That these weren't fan engagements at all, but targeted extractions. Orchestrated under the illusion of access. Using a trusted brand to lure the unsuspecting. By the time the parents finished testifying, no one in the courtroom could pretend this was just about music anymore. This was about trust, manipulation, and a system that had used fame as a mask for something far more sinister. It wasn't a stage that cracked the case open. It was a spreadsheet. Forensic accounting teams traced the money, and what they found didn't follow the music. It followed a trail of dissolved marketing firms, shell companies with short lifespans, and long shadows. At the center, a company called Pulse Guest Relations. On paper, it looked like a boutique events coordination service. The kind hired to manage VIP logistics, hospitality, fan engagement. But deeper analysis told a different story. Pulse shared financial DNA, banking structures, cross-payments, executive overlaps, with businesses linked directly to Sean Combs' organizational network. The ties were not speculative. They were embedded in wire transfers, tax filings, and backdated invoices. And more disturbingly, in contracts for unpaid labor. Assignments that had been given to several of the missing individuals. The deeper investigators went, the clearer the picture became. Decoded internal messages revealed a systematic coordination between multiple entertainment industry entities. It wasn't just one company, one show, or one artist. It was infrastructure shared, exploited, and compartmentalized. And the tour, the glittering, global phenomenon that sold out stadiums in minutes. That was the cover. The buses. The venue staff. The credentialing systems. The chaos of live production. It all provided a moving shell under which entirely unrelated operations could function. Out of sight. Out of question. Until now. The realization was stark. This wasn't about concert management gone wrong. This was about an entertainment empire repurposed intentionally for objectives that had nothing to do with art, music, or performance. Only control. Only profit. And people who vanished into the machinery of it all. Perhaps the most chilling discovery in the investigation came not from documents or bank records, but from a single piece of jewelry. A pendant, elegant and unassuming, recovered from the belongings of one of the missing young women. But inside it, hidden beneath its polished surface, was a device not merely decorative, but engineered. It was a dual-function tool, an audio recorder and a biometric access key, digitally registered to multiple Combs-owned properties. When investigators accessed the encrypted data, they uncovered a 16-second voice recording, muffled, fragmented, but unmistakably real. Voices, snippets of phrases, hints of urgency, of surveillance, and, beneath it all, a tone that sounded a lot like coercion. One voice can be heard saying, "She doesn't know she's being moved tonight." Another responds, "Keep her quiet until after check-in." It was no longer a question of speculation. This was evidence of orchestration. Parallel to the audio findings, investigators reviewed hotel surveillance linked to key tour stops. What they found only deepened the concern. Footage from multiple locations, missing segments. Time gaps where there should have been continuous recordings. No data. No explanation. Just blackouts. Hotel staff at these same venues described rooms that were cleared of identifiers, guests who arrived under aliases, and instructions from upper management to avoid asking questions. It was a mosaic of silence, woven together by fear, influence, or something more deliberate. What began as a missing persons case was now unraveling as something far more coordinated. A system of control, of movement, of surveillance, hidden in the margins of pop culture's most visible empire. And that tiny piece of jewelry, it had whispered what so many others couldn't. Something was terribly wrong. At first, it looked like nothing more than another fan theory. Just noise in the endless sea of internet speculation. An anonymous account called Swift-Coded. Cryptic posts, strange images, fragmented lyrics twisted into riddles. Some dismissed it as an elaborate fan project. Others thought it was harmless trolling. But then the pattern began to emerge. Posts that seemed abstract at first glance matched real-world events with disturbing precision. A date. A city. A phrase, "Watch the red ones." Days later, a young woman, one of the missing, was last seen wearing a red wristband in that very city. Suddenly, it wasn't just fan fiction. It was foreshadowing. Digital forensic teams dug deeper. What they uncovered was far more sinister. Swift-Coded wasn't random. The account was hosted on servers connected to entities already under scrutiny in the investigation. Businesses tied to the same shadow network behind. Pulse Guest Relations and Combs-affiliated properties. It wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. Post histories aligned with concert dates. Obscure references pointed to hotel locations. Even access points later confirmed as unlisted service routes. The language, once considered esoteric fandom code, now read like operational leaks. Warnings masked as riddles. A digital breadcrumb trail. Left not for fans, but for insiders. Investigators believe someone inside the system was using the account to signal, to warn, or perhaps to taunt. But one thing was clear. The line between performance and manipulation had been blurred beyond recognition. What began online as cryptic whispers was now evidence of something calculated. A conspiracy not just in motion, but hiding in plain sight. The prosecution saved its most haunting evidence for last. A single clip. Grainy security footage from the Nashville venue. Projected on the courtroom screens in complete silence. There, amid the blur of stage lights and surging fans, was a figure moving against the flow, while thousands screamed in unison, arms raised in celebration. This person moved the other way. Head down, pace urgent, expression unmistakably distressed. The red wristband was visible. The same design that had surfaced again and again throughout the case. Unofficial, untraceable, and central to the entire investigation. Investigators cross-referenced the footage with descriptions from multiple missing persons reports. The height, the clothing, the band. All matched. This individual was clearly documented entering the venue. Badge scanned. Logged. But after that moment, they disappeared. No footage of an exit. No trace among the crowds. No movement past security checkpoints. Just, gone. And when the prosecution turned to the individual's digital presence, it told the same story. Social media accounts, silent. Phone, disconnected. Location data, ceased. Nothing after that night. The courtroom sat in weighted stillness. This wasn't theory. It wasn't interpretation. It was a timeline with an endpoint, marked by red light, loud music, and a person vanishing in the middle of it all. In a world designed to be watched, how does someone disappear right in front of thousands of eyes? That was the question left hanging in the air, as the footage faded to black, and the prosecution rested its case. By the time the final pieces of evidence were laid bare, the full picture had emerged, and it was staggering. What the investigation uncovered wasn't just a series of isolated incidents. It was a sophisticated operation. One that had exploited the infrastructure of major entertainment events, transforming them into conduits for activity far removed from music, art, or celebration. At its core, the touring industry is massive. Venues, production crews, security personnel, promotional teams, digital ticketing systems. A network so sprawling and complex, it provides the perfect camouflage. A system built for movement, noise, and spectacle. Ideal for hiding in plain sight. The operation didn't require the direct involvement of headlining artists. In fact, it thrived by staying just beyond the spotlight. Embedded in secondary channels. Vendors, temporary staffing firms, credentialing subcontracts. Legitimate pathways used to smuggle illegitimate intent. The evidence showed how this shadow system worked. Parasitic. Feeding off the legitimacy of the entertainment machine. How it used celebrity culture as bait. Social media manipulation as the law. And event logistics as the means of control. And the result? Spaces meant for joy and connection. Concerts, meet and greets, fan experiences. Were weaponized into mechanisms of harm. It wasn't just the acts of a few bad actors. It was a structural perversion of how artists connect with their audiences in the digital age. A betrayal not just of individuals, but of the trust that underpins modern entertainment itself. The case forced a reckoning. How much of what we call access is real? And how much of it is being engineered, manipulated, repurposed? For goals the public never agreed to. It wasn't about Taylor Swift. It wasn't about any one tour. It was about the systems behind the spectacle. And the urgent, uncomfortable truth. That even our most sacred cultural spaces can be infiltrated, corrupted, and turned against us. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a warning.